Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Andrew Orsatti from FIFPRO, the Global Union of Professional Football Players. Today we meet Asmir Begovic, currently a goalkeeper at AC Milan and for his national team Bosnia-Herzegovina, to learn more about him, what makes him tick, and we want to understand what has driven him to become a member of FIFPRO's Global Player Council. First of all, allow me to introduce to you Asmir Begovic. Asmir, thank you for joining us. How are you holding up in these times of the corona crisis, especially given that you're based in the north of Italy, which has been one of the hotspots, of course, during this global pandemic?
Well, Andrew, first and foremost, thanks a lot for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you guys today and having this fantastic chat. But I'm holding up pretty good, you know. It's been a crazy few months, as we all know. Initially, when obviously Italy was hit very, very hard, especially the northern part of Italy, as you said. Things hit home for everyone, right? But obviously, over the last couple of months, we've been getting back to somewhat of normality. We've been training hard. Obviously, the games are coming thick and fast, so we're doing okay. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's doing okay, and I guess that's the most important thing.
Indeed. Well, Asmir is, as I mentioned, a member of the FIFPRO Global Player Council. And here is, well, I guess the team that lines up alongside him at the moment. A few goalkeepers, I should point out, not only Asmir Begovic, but you also see the likes of Andre Onana, Rui Patricio, Kevin Trapp. The list goes on. Eiji Kawashima, another goalkeeper. But looking across the board, not only top male players, but leading female players as well. Anita Asante, Jennifer Beattie, Lucy Bronze, amongst many others. Elise Kellen-Knight, Saki Kumagai, Kim Little. Some other names that will jump out at you for those seeing this group for the first time. Giorgio Chiellini needs no introduction, nor does Vincent Kompany, another huge name, and Nicolas Tagliafico. So there we have the FIFPRO Global Player Council, and today, the idea is to have a conversation, not only with Asmir, but also Jonas Baer-Hoffmann, who is the General Secretary of FIFPRO. He took over that role in 2020 at the start of this year, just before the coronavirus hit, in fact. So he's had his hands pretty full. Jonas, thank you for joining us, and I know you're going to be steering us in this conversation. So I'll leave it to you to introduce a little bit about FIFPRO and then to start the conversation with Asmir. Thanks, Jonas.
Thanks, Andrew. And yeah, indeed, a few very, very exciting and challenging months. As FIFPRO, and probably part of why we wanted to create the Player Council, of which, Asmir, you're a part, is we want to be globally visible as the voice of the players, which we've been for more than 50 years. But nowadays, the game is incredibly internationalized. The issues that are affecting the players and the game are international. And we wanted to stack a global assembly of players next to the domestic unions to really give a platform and an environment in which these discussions can be had. And yeah, naturally, we hit right into a time for the last 6 months where there was one issue affecting all the players around the world in the same way. It's been certainly a unifying dimension for the player union work, but it's been an incredibly challenging period, and many of the players, especially in the smaller markets and smaller clubs, are substantially struggling, as are, of course, so many million people around the world with this crisis. But Asmir, it's really, really cool to have this conversation. The first one we do of this kind. I'm sure there's more to follow. I think you're the perfect first partner to have the conversation with. You're a very global citizen, right? With your roots in Bosnia, growing up Germany, in the US, North America, played in England, etc. So how are you? Yeah, not only how have you experienced it yourself, but how are you seeing the world that we're living in right now?
Yeah, well, absolutely. As you said, my life story could lead us on to quite a bit of time here, so I won't bore anyone. But ultimately, as you said, we're living in a very interesting time in the world, and we're all adjusting, we're all moving all the time, and I think that's sort of the biggest word I can use is adjustment at the moment. We're all learning different ways to cope with, obviously a global pandemic, but obviously just social injustice issues in and around the world, everything that's very much in the forefront of things at the moment. So it's important to be, I think, a good person. I think to make positive contributions to society and be there for one another. I think that's one thing I've really learned is how much, and how far caring can go. And I think caring for each other and caring for the world and ultimately caring for the game, which is what I think FIFPRO stands for, being able to use that love for the game and passion for the game and creating a really positive environment.
Yeah, it's been very challenging for us to see how the crisis has country by country affected, of course, the playing group itself. And at the same time, it's been so encouraging to see whether it's the big public campaigns of a Marcus Rashford or the more silent initiatives that are happening all over the world, to see how much responsibility has actually been built between the game and their communities. And we had these conversations the last time we got together with the group about social activism. I know it's something you're feeling incredibly strong about. What's been your engagement with the community in Italy while you were there, or the community back home maybe in Bosnia as well, where we're now actually moving probably into a more difficult period than when Italy was at its worst?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely shifted in different ways. I mean, as you said, my home is in the UK. I'm from Bosnia, so that's my home country. And then, of course, I work currently in Italy. So I'm connected to a few communities, and there's different ways of helping out. And we here in Italy, in Milan, have been very switched on with the foundation work of our club here at AC Milan, and they've been really kind of getting involved with the local community, whether that's by financial support, whether it's by emotional support, spiritual support, whatever way we can get involved in the local community to make sure that we're thinking of them. It's important to us to do that, and that's been great. And as you said, you go back to Bosnia, and that's an area where it's starting to get hit a little bit more now than it was initially. And again, it's about trying to help people there. I mean, trying to help that economy, which isn't thriving at the best of times, right? So trying to get people to continue to get out there in a safe environment, to continue to work and look after themselves and their families. So there's different ways. And then one of the ways we've also gotten involved with is in the UK, is especially through my foundation, is kind of helping grassroots football get involved again, because we've definitely seen them getting hit. They don't have big, huge TV deals or anything else. They really survive based on the football that they get through games and people that are really involved in their local community. So it's stretched quite a lot. And I guess the biggest thing that I've really gotten involved in is the United Nations Refugee Program. It's something that I was made aware of a few months ago, something that I've went through a couple of times in my life. And, we've done a couple of events to raise some funds, but obviously most importantly, raise some awareness. There's over about 26 million refugees all around the world, which is just a number that is way too high at the best of times, let alone now in a pandemic where pandemic doesn't discriminate. So everyone's affected, and these people are really struggling now, and it's something that we're trying to help with as much as possible.
I might just jump in here, if I can, Jonas, because maybe not everyone out there who has enjoyed seeing Asmir Begovic, the player, understands where he comes from, what he endured together with his family. As Asmir mentioned, a refugee who fled Bosnia with his family at the age of 4, ended up in Germany, spent many years there before ending up in Canada, representing his national team there, before he would embark on a professional football journey where he spent the bulk of it playing in the top flight of England, the Premier League, and of course today he finds himself at Milan. But it's been a big journey, Asmir. Can you talk about your upbringing, your childhood, and how that shaped your values? Who are you? We want to learn about the man behind the man we see between the posts wearing gloves, let's say.
Yeah, no, well, of course, it goes back to, as you said, I was born in 1987. And soon after that, life gets turned upside down pretty quickly. The conflict and the war breaks out in the former Yugoslavia. And my parents, taking that responsibility, moved myself and my brother away from Bosnia. You pack up all your things and you get in the car and off you go. And it's an incredibly scary time, and at that time I was only 4 years old, so I don't really have any recollection of that. And I only really realize now, being a parent myself and kind of understanding what the world's going through right now, what they must have been thinking all those years ago. So I have a lot of appreciation for them, and a lot of appreciation for all parents out there who gone through such tricky times. But then after that, as you say, you move on to Germany, you live there, and I start really to play football. I get involved in the grassroots game. My dad was a professional goalkeeper, so I've always had football as my safety net, as you can say, and something to focus on and make friends, and pursue as a career eventually. So it's always given me that outlet, really. And then soon after that, again, 6 years later, I'm 10 years old, and we were forced to move again. You become a refugee, seeking asylum for a second time, and this time I really remember it. And I think that's the period that really shaped me, because that's a period that humbles you. You go to the bottom, and it's all about working your way up again. And you go to Canada, you start a new life. You know absolutely nobody. You don't know the language. And I think that's what teachers taught me togetherness. We talk about it as a family. We care for each other. We're there for each other through tough times, not just the good times. But when you go through these things together, then obviously you learn a lot about each other. And I think that was a huge period. And I think something that not only humbled me, but also gave me such motivation to really give my best in life, and just try and work hard every single day, because you never know when things might get taken away from you again. I mean, that's not even through a fault of your own, just for circumstances. And I think now is a prime example of that. And I think that's what we have to think about the world as a whole, about the society. And it's if you're going through something good, there's always someone maybe struggling. And, it's about trying to keep as balanced and as humble as possible.
I think you touched an interesting point there earlier about how this crisis is not discriminating, and of course we're seeing right now that the biggest economy in the world is arguably hit the hardest by this crisis. It's certainly not a poor nation's problem, but we do see how it discriminates against people who have a worse starting point, if you will, whether it's access to healthcare, whether it's access to just fundamental sanitary equipment and all of these things. And of course, it hits those people who have jobs that are more fragile in this period. And I think that's where we still learn, hopefully, from this crisis, that we can manage through this period and we'll somehow get out of it country by country. But there are some structural deficits, right, that you as a refugee have experienced very much firsthand, which put people at a different starting point, at a more challenging starting point. And I find it very inspiring to hear your story and how that makes you reflect on where we are today and what we have to deal with, and how you can maybe use football as a vehicle to progress in that. That said, I mean, it goes from one to the next. We obviously went from this crisis right into maybe the biggest social justice movement since the 1960s. It's obviously an issue that you probably were confronted with along your way throughout your professional career. And clearly it's an issue that in Italy has raised a lot of attention lately in the past years, whether it's in stadia, racist vilification of players, whether it's been some of the media commentary that's been very, very, well, questionable to say the least. How are you experiencing this right now, the movement amongst the players, supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting the change of societal cohesiveness, I guess? Is that a conversation in the dressing room? Is it something that you experience differently now than maybe a few months ago?
I think it's definitely a topic of conversation, as you can imagine, and we're always looking at ways of being able to use our platform and our situation to try and make a difference and trying to help. And I think, as you said, the last time we got together and we had a call, there's probably two outline messages really that need to be focused on, and things that can be, I think, really, really powerful. I think one is the constant education and the constant promotion of change and better things, because we talk about racism or whatever, refugees, we talk about things and issues that are in the world, and we pick and choose moments when we want to talk about it, right? Whereas I think, why can't something like that be a constant? Why can't it be regular? Why can't we have campaigns, advertising, whatever, maybe educational programs to be as constant on this as possible, so that's in people's minds, and we're making progress every single day, right? And I guess when I look at this as a big picture, are we in a better place than we were 100 years ago? Are we in a better place than we were 50 years ago? I would probably say yes, we are. As a world and a society, and how we respect each other, I think we are, but we still have a long way to go. And, it's something that might be a mission, and whether that's going to be achieved ever reach that perfection, I don't know. But it's something that I think should be a progress and a process every single day, and something that we can do, we can do better all the time. And I think secondly, I think the people, when we talk about going straight to the top, right? We think about people, corporate people, we talk about leaders, presidents, people in charge. I think that they really have to look at themselves, because when these things happen, we all try and make a change in our way, and we use our platform, and we use our player council, we use everything we possibly can. But ultimately, we are not the decision makers. We're not the people who enforce laws. We're not the people who make these decisions. So we really have to try and reach and educate and talk and take that message across the people who can make the biggest difference. And that's something I've found with even the United Nations programs. People like myself, other athletes, we're more than happy to get involved. People donate, people share messages all the time. But then, you're thinking, where was the powers in this? Did they get involved and do it? And they probably didn't. They lacked that support for that cause. And I think that's the part that's disappointing. So can we reach those people in power? And we understand they have a lot of responsibility. We understand that they have a whole world, whole country to look after. But I think it's something, in some way, somehow, we have to reach these people. Because if we can try and force that change from the top, then it really is going to go filter down through all the ranks.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it starts with, and I say that as a white man who's running an organization, I think it starts with honestly and sincerely exposing yourself to that difficult conversation. That you do have privilege, that you did have probably stepping stones that other people didn't have to get to where you got. And I don't think you have to blame yourself for it, but you have to be conscious of it, and you have to improve the environment around you so that more people who may have hurdles in their way now have the same opportunity to grow and to get to the same pathways to leadership and all of that. I think it's very important that football has a great opportunity to reinforce the movement for change right now, but it has to be sincere about what it has to do itself. Otherwise, it's just another campaign, just another T-shirt. And we're definitely trying to play our part in not letting that happen, because you feel amongst the playing group that this is not a change that anybody has a whole lot of patience with any longer. It's about change now and not change in 5 years or in 10 years, etc. I find that important, that people understand that the player experience is something that you cannot reimagine if you're sitting on your sofa watching and you imagine what it may be to be yelled at. It's something different when you're on the field and you hear these vilifications again and again and again, and at some point you're just not willing to take it any longer. And I sometimes say, imagine if you sit here in the office and you do your job and every day you have to face this. You wouldn't accept it. And you wouldn't have accepted to take it 3 times until somebody does something about it. You would want the help, you would want the protection, you would want the consequences now. And that's, I think, where football needs to get very quickly.
One key word you mentioned there is, and I've been in Premier League meetings, I've listened to other players and other captains, and we talk about the situation. And like you said, sometimes it's important to listen, but it's not just listening. Are we taking that message on board? And just being there for everyone. But we talk about consequences, that's one thing. Like, I compare it very simple. And this is a really maybe off the point conversation, but why do we stop at a red light? Well, because that's a rule, and that's enforced, right? Because if you go through a red light, you either get punished or you might get killed. So it's a really extreme point, right? But why do people do racist things at football matches and obviously just in and around on the streets or in any environment? Well, obviously they must not be fearful of the consequences, and that's almost a way. Can we almost enforce this way of working and make people think twice about their actions? Because we're not, like you said, a weekend passes, something happens, another weekend goes, an international match come in, and another weekend comes, and it's happening again. For me, I think that's where we've got to reach people in power. Maybe that's the only way. We're trying to do things in the right way in campaigns, and we're trying to educate people in a really normal way. But sometimes, really strong measures have to be put in place to put people off and maybe really think twice about their actions.
Yeah. It's also, I think, a reflection on on football itself. I mean, we all know what incredible joy and passion and positivity it brings to literally hundreds of millions of people around the world, but it is a true reflection that it is also a place in which people with challenging views on the world, let's put it this way, where they're racist or misogynist or homophobic, whatever, find an environment where certain behavior has been accepted. And personally, I'm not a big fan of taking my little kids to stadia yet, because I don't want them to hear everything that is being yelled around.
It's crazy, Jonas. I did a piece for The Athletic about a year ago now, and I couldn't agree with that point more. And then we see now with this pandemic, we see that our game is so important as a whole, right? Because it doesn't feel right when it's not as a whole, and that means fans being there in stadiums. It means fans being around the stadiums. It's us interacting with fans, all the media, just everyone being part of this thing. Because our product and our game and our sport is not the same, of course, without everyone being a part of it. So we've realized that something's missing, and we will, of course, we want to get that back. And as good as football is, and if we're 80, 85, even 90% there, there's obviously the other 10 to 20% missing, and there's always 10 to 20% that we can improve. And again, I've been flabbergasted for years now with that situation in football matches as to why racial abuse, homophobic, and just abuse in general is actually allowed. I'm a huge sports fan. I've been to other sports events, and only in football do I really see this strong hate against either players or referees or coaches. Like it's not a fun environment. Like I took my kids away from games a long time ago because they're like, "Daddy, why is such and such shouting at so and so? Why are they doing these names? Like these are not." And there is no reason for it. Like there's no relation. There's no one's done anything wrong to this person, but they somehow feel, and it's almost like an environmental thing, somehow they feel the right to be able to shout abuse at a referee, just someone who's doing his job, or a player. And you, like you said, it just doesn't get accepted. You don't go to the supermarket and the whole, every customer goes and shouts at the lady at the till or the person at the till, and for scanning the wrong items. Like it just doesn't happen. Why does it happen in football? And it's a question I've asked myself for a long time.
Yeah, and even when you stay within the realm of sport, I mean, you're wearing your NBA themed T-shirt there. I remember very well when a couple of years ago Russell Westbrook got racially insulted when he was playing in Utah, and that was one person, and it had a massive reaction. And it had the owner of the Utah Jazz standing up in front of their fans ahead of the next game and basically telling them, "Look, if that's what you believe, we don't want you here. And I don't want your tickets money, and I don't want your merchandise money, because that's not what we stand for." And it showed how one individual incident there, in a country which we right now see has massive tensions socially around ethnicity and its history and all that, but still in that environment it was an unacceptable behavior, and the players called it out immediately. Whereas in football, I agree with you. I mean, the reports that we've done for years, even when you step away from racism or homophobia, the amount of violent verbal and sometimes physical attacks that players are facing in some parts of the world is staggering. And yet we haven't really, as football, encouraged or embraced or enforced a culture that would get rid of that. And I think that's a big challenge for the game.
It blows your mind, doesn't it? I mean, we talk about football as a whole, and obviously we're a player council with local players, but consider referees and coaches. I mean, you talk about a stadium, sometimes 50,000 people will chant at a manager, "You're going to get sacked in the morning." Like, why would you wish for anyone to lose their job?
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah.
Why is this? It just doesn't happen anywhere else. Well, I've been to basketball games, and they try and make this as fun of an experience as possible, and it's about entertainment and everything else. And of course, there's a result at the end of it. But I've never seen that happen before at an NBA game or a cricket game or rugby game. So for me, I really understand why how we can affect these situations is a really big. I think motivating factor for me, and just trying to use the voice, the platform that we have.
If we look at you and what's driving you and the legacy you want to leave, you're working with a number of different bodies right now. We talked about your past as a refugee. You work with the UN on that program. You have your own charity, or the Asmir Begovic Foundation, which is also doing some work, and you have your own academy teaching goalkeepers. So that's led you to a certain point of your life working with your local players association in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and now FIFPRO on the global level through the Global Player Council. So what do you hope that you can bring to this discussion using this platform and these many platforms you have?
I was born into a football family. I was born into this game, and it's a game that I want to be involved in for the rest of my life in one way, shape, or form. And I think it's that sort of love and passion for the game that I just really want to be able to bring to the next generation, and just the game in general, and inspire players and kids and anyone alike. And I think there's many different ways of doing it. Absolutely, you talk about a charitable aspect, and it just started off with me wanting to give back. And we want to build sports facilities. We want to create that environment where kids can play and follow their dreams, just like I did, and everything else. But when I started that, I realized, okay, right. So it really isn't as simple as that. There's a lot of different things that come into it. Political corruption, people blocking your ways, protecting their own interests. So it's turned into more and more serious things. And then obviously it's opened my eyes to a lot more situations, which is then again, wanted to make me go and join councils like this and local councils and the federations to try and make even a bigger difference. And it's something that has really motivated me, and it's going to continue to motivate me. So there's different ways. You talk about goalkeeper academies. Again, it's about kids who have someone to look up to, and even when I was growing up, I admired goalkeepers, professional goalkeepers, like everyone. Everyone had their heroes, but I never really had that contact with them. So be able to kind of train under their name or under their philosophy, and just be able to interact with them from time to time, whether it's my academies, whether it's camps, and I think that means a lot to them, because I know what it's like to kind of look up at professionals and think, oh my God, they're bigger than God. Kind of. There's so many different ways you can get involved, and I think FIFPRO is the ultimate. It's the sort of global voice, it's the global platform, and again, I think because I've been involved in the game since for 33 years now, since I was born, and I want to be involved for a long time. I think this is the right way to get involved and just make as much positive impact on the game all around as humanly possible.
So talk to us a little bit about the role of a player association defending the fundamental rights of the professional footballer, who is a worker, an employee of his club. You have experience in Bosnia, you've experienced other parts of the world, playing in England with the English PFA, another FIFPRO member. You've also been in Canada. So can you talk to us about the local support networks that are absolutely essential to help players achieve as much as they possibly can from their careers?
Oh, well, absolutely. As you mentioned, I mean, these player councils and federations, they're there just to protect simple human elements of a football player. We talked about my experiences with the PFA in England, and they've done a great job, because they've been established a long time ago, and they've grown and grown and grown, and they've really put themselves as maybe the best player council or players council in the world of football. So that it takes time, of course, but again, they're just there to protect and provide simple protection for footballers, just as normal humans and workers, like in any way of life. We forget that footballers are just, as you say, human sometimes, and they should get paid on time, just as most other employees in other businesses. Why should footballers be any different? They deserve to have pensions. They deserve to have rights. We've been involved with the young player savings scheme, so just different ways of being able to educate players and get involved. And I think because of the strength of that association in England, players' rights are actually quite well protected. But then you go to the other end of the scale, and you go to Bosnia, where the player council has an incredible amount of work to do, and just to protect those basic human rights for footballers there, because people get taken advantage of, and for some reason people think it's okay. It's okay to not pay footballers for 2, 3, 4 months, but it wouldn't be okay in any other business. So it's about standing up for those players, and also one of the things we've also seen, I think people forget, is that transition for after playing. Football playing on the pitch can be a very, very short career. Circumstances, injuries might make it even shorter than normal. We talk about an average career being somewhere 7 to 8 years, which isn't long at all, right? So it's about helping that transition. That's one of the biggest things I've seen with mental health issues, that lack of purpose that people might have because that's all they ever wanted to do as a kid. They want to be a footballer, and plan A works out, and all of a sudden you have to shift quickly to plan B, and you don't have a plan B. So there's many different issues that our councils all over the world are fighting all the time and working with. And I think I'm proud of the work that the PFA do, that the Bosnian Council do, FIFPRO do. They're doing such a great job to try and encourage to spread this message even more and more all the time. And there's plenty of room to grow, as you say, but it's definitely on a good way.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting also for somebody who's as passionate about the game as you are, and who's obviously lived his entire life through it and has an interest in where it develops, is that there's a very clear, prevalent reality that in those countries where those relationships between the players and their clubs and the federations as their employer for the national team duties are well managed, the game itself prospers as well, right? Because it creates stability, it creates an environment in which the players can really focus on what they're meant to do, which is become the best they can possibly be on the pitch, and be the ambassadors in the community that they can be. But that doesn't happen if the environment is unstable. And you see in countries like Bosnia where contracts are incredibly short, pay is not very good. You get through situations right now where maybe for a few months you don't have an income. All of a sudden you worry about your family and all of this. And it creates a cycle of negativity in the game itself, right? So I think there needs to be a growing understanding by those who run the games and the competitions that it's actually an asset for them to have the players, like we're hearing here today, engaged with the sport in a positive way and actually are in an environment in which they can perform at their best.
Well, I mean, you nailed it on the head there. It's about creating that stable environment that people want to join. Right now, if you ask many players, you want to go play in Bosnia, they were like, well, I like playing football, but I'd rather not, And that's what you don't want. Whereas, do you want to go play in England in the Premier League? Yes, I'd love to. And it's not just because it's great stadiums and great fans and atmosphere. It's the fact that they actually have really good rights and they're protected really well. And they don't have anything else to worry about it other than playing football in general. So exactly, it's all about creating that sort of environment, and it takes time. It takes buy-in from people. It takes buy-in from the federation, from everyone involved to try and make this the best possible environment it can be. And it takes time. It takes people to work out and be open-minded, which doesn't happen as much as we'd like it to. But if people are trying, and that's all you can ask for is maximum effort. And ultimately, over time, if you keep doing the right things, then things will improve. Yeah,
no, I think that's fantastic. I think what this symbolizes in listening to you is, I think the mind shift that the game needs is to see in every country that the players are an active part of the game. They're not just the passive pieces that you put on the pitch and then they play and then you organize everything around them. They should be actively engaged. And whether it's questions of, like we talked about, racism in the game, or whether it's more pragmatic things like their working conditions, or right now where you, I think, are going to play 10, 11 games in a month, which is probably not going to be terribly good for your muscles and your ligaments and your bones. I think those are conversations that need to be had with the players and not about the players.
Well, exactly right. I think open conversation is very, very important. We all want what's best for the sport. It's not about one individual interest over anything. It's about having the best possible product. And as you say, is the product of the Serie A going to be great if we're playing 11 games in 35 days? Probably not. It's maybe what's necessary now, but obviously sometimes needs must. And we will all be there, and we'll take one for the team. Because we know that this product, this league, is so important, not just for the Serie A, but as we talk about the whole pyramid. So we know that we have a responsibility to the whole game to make sure this goes ahead and helps everyone involved. But going forward, we need to have conversations as to how we can be the best possible product all together, joined together.
Fantastic, really great conversation. Thank you, Jonas and Asmir. We could go on forever, it seems, but we have to close it here for now. And again, to everyone watching this is only the first in a series of conversations with the world's leading male and female players, some of whom are now part of the FIFPRO Global Player Council. We'll be unveiling more information over the coming weeks and months, and you can follow all the latest updates at www.fifpro.org. Asmir, thank you very much. Good luck for the rest of this campaign with AC Milan, and we hope to be able to see you again in person, if possible, very soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Asmir. It was a really fun conversation, I have to say, and I'm sure people learned a lot about our Global Player Council today, so thanks again.
It's an honor to be part of the council, and looking forward to it all.